So today we're back with another new engine, and I'm always looking for unique stuff that I can bring home. I can throw on the run stand, open up, inspect, film. And this one is unique because it's my first 4.8. I effectively never do anything with 4.8s, simply because if you're going LS, you might as well just start 5.3. I picked this up really cheap because I want the cylinder heads for another engine that's sitting over there. I'll talk about that in a little bit. But in the meantime, I figure we'll throw it on the run stand, open it up, prime it, see how it looks inside, and see if it runs. Here we've got the motor racked up on the run stand, and exactly what we're looking at is a 2004 4.8 LR4. Now, LR4 is not to be confused with LM4, LM4 being the 0304 aluminum 5.3 that comes in the Trailblazers. The LR4 is the 99 to 06 basic 4.8 engine, effectively, companioning with the 99 to 06 LM7. The way that I can tell this is a 2004 is for two reasons. First off, we have 13mm valley pan bolts, which means this is in fact a floating wrist pin engine. Not that it matters because the rods are too long. Secondly, we have the date code, which is F034, which means this block was casted in, June 3rd, 2004. The backstory on this engine is supposedly it has a bad lifter, and then it's been sitting in the guy I got it from's backyard for like 3 years. I can tell that's true because it's got a lot of surface rust on random parts that don't have oil in it. It had no plugs in it. There's a bunch of spider webs in all the exhaust ports. I think he had some tape on here. I may have pulled it off. I can't remember how I got it. But basically, what I want to do is pull the valve covers off, look at it. I haven't looked at it any further than what you see here. But we'll prime it, oil it up, and if I get it running and it makes a bunch of noise, then that's the perfect opportunity to pull the heads, keep them for myself, and then figure out what to do with the 4.8 short block. One thing about the 5.3 and 4.8 from Gen 3 is that there is no way to exterior-wise tell if it's a 4.8 or a 5.3. If the engine's still in the car, you can look at the VIN. So VIN V, Victor, is 4.8, and VIN T, Tango, that's 5.3. Assuming this thing actually runs and doesn't make noise and there's no reason to pull the heads off, I'll bore scope it to make sure it's actually a 4.8. The two ways that you can tell by going into it is one, pull the oil pan and look at the connecting rods. Obviously the connecting rods on the 4.8 are really long because it's the shorter stroke, whereas the 5.3 has dish pistons. That way the same heads make the same compression for both stroke lengths. So if it runs, we'll bore scope it, make sure it has flat tops, and if it has flat tops, it's worthless. I'll take the heads off. Driver's side valve cover, which is always dirtier because the PCB's on this side. Ooh, very sludgy and very watery. Oh my goodness, this is crazy. Yeah, so like I said, this guy was down by the beach, but I will say this does seem more like watery oil. A lot of times I see this side like totally carbony black. This is all really light, and it also, it doesn't really smell that bad. So this side's always worse. Let me see what the other side looks like. Big reveal. Yeah, see, not that bad. So maybe it's just pulling all the, well, it's still sludgy, but yeah, no, that's pretty thick. At least it's good that there was oil in this engine, because if it's sitting outside, it's nice and lubricated, staying all nice in here. So once this is all cleaned, it should be really, really good looking. So the engine did in fact come with oil in it. I didn't drain any of it out. I figure now we'll just spin the motor over, make sure all the rockers do. I tried to clean a lot of the ports here so that we could maybe see some oil coming up out of the, but it's just so sludgy. And then for the meantime, I pulled the oil pressure sender to see if I get oil up out of here. As soon as I get oil out of here, I'll put that back in. But let's see what happens. We got oil back there. Oil pressure sender's back in. Let's just spin it over till we see oil out of one of the rockers. So all of these holes were wiped clean. You can see there's a little bit of oil building up. So it's trying to push it all through. It's all really sludgy of the stuff that's coming out. But figure now we'll just, it spins. It doesn't make any noise. Like now at least, these are all seem to be like where they're supposed to be. I'm thinking maybe it was so sludgy that maybe a lifter started making noise, who knows. But yeah, I'll just finish throwing it together, throw the carb stuff on, and fire it up and see if we, also I want to get it super hot to try to burn off all this, watery garbage. Got everything hooked up except for the cooling system. So carb's on, exhaust's on, ignition's on. Pretty sure everything's plugged in. So I'm just gonna go ahead and let's see what happens. cranking pretty slow. Let me check some stuff out. Normally it starts a lot faster than that. Let's try. So I don't know if you can see it, but most of the smoke is actually WD-40 since I lubed up the cylinders before I started it. So there's a little noise. I haven't even turned it off yet, but a little bit of noise, but it's not that bad. That's kind of smoky. It's been running for probably about a little over a minute. Let me shut it down. And I got my water bottle ready to do the header test. It kind of sounds like it's missing, but it's just hard to tell. So good, 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 good. Good, 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 good. Yeah, so it passes the header test. Kind of sounds like a miss, although with the dual exhaust, it always kind of sounds like that. But I'll let it cool down a little bit, and then we'll fire it back up again. I'm just gonna rev the hell out of it. A lot of times that's actually fixed it. Like I've had noises, then you rev them, and then they magically fix themselves. If that doesn't do it, then we'll put the cooling system on and then run it for a lot longer. While this thing was cooling down, I decided to pull out my bore scope and inspect, whether or not this is actually a 4.8. So basically, the next thing I'm gonna do is rev the hell out of this thing. And if it's a 4.8, I obviously don't care much about it, so I'm free to rev it. But if it's a 5.3, it's worth considerably more. And sure enough, I stuck my camera down in there. It's really hard to see because it's not a very high quality camera and it's really dark. But I think I do in fact see a dish. So this is probably actually a 5.3. Interesting enough, when I bought it, the guy told me that it was out of an Avalanche. And I explained to him, I was like, well, so technically the Suburban and Avalanches only came with 5.3s. It's only the, whatever base model Silverados and the Tahoes that came with 4.8s. So that's another good way, if you don't know if you have a 5.3 or not, if it came out of a longer wheelbase SUV, it's 5.3. I will say, this engine doesn't seem to start as fast as all the other ones. Vibrations making the exhaust come loose. So there's definitely something moving around in there. Probably a lifter coming apart. It sounds pretty fast to be lifter. It could be a piston letting go, like I always find. But any reason to actually tear this motor apart. So something isn't happy, and it's getting worse with revving. And yeah, even if this thing's a 5.3 and technically worth not 0, I'm still committed. I need the heads, and I do get people sometimes asking me for short blocks. So let me let it cool down, and I think we're just gonna rip the heads off and just tear everything apart and find out what's making noise. I figure before I tear it down, I'll give it one last good rev. I never really get to rev them that high on the stand because every engine I get usually runs, and I usually want to either keep it for myself or sell to somebody. So. the noise is getting worse and I don't want to damage my head that I want. Got this thing stripped back down to a long block. It's still very, very hot. As you can see, maybe you can see there's some steam coming out of there. Yeah, I'm really interested now to see what the oil looks like after getting a bunch of heat and also a bunch of RPM in it. So let me go ahead and put this down and we can get the valve covers off. See what the Italian tune-up did to the dirty side. Okay, all pretty much the same. So that's what the underside of the valve cover looks like. So you can see all this very, very hot sludge all in there. Although it looks a little bit less watery because maybe the water is what's steaming off. Let me get the other side off. Now for the other side. Yeah, so pretty much the same, just lots of sludge, but now oil has moved around and it's a lot darker rather than being so light with all the water in it. Now I'm gonna go ahead and get all the rockers off. I'll remove the sludgy. Oh, these things are, they're so slimy, they're hard to grab, and they're still hot. I'm just trying to show like just how thick this goop is. You know, a lot of these head bolts, you can't even see it. It's like that deep. But one thing though, I cleaned this rocker. I got the rest of them here. I cleaned this rocker off because it's all like watery sludge. It's not as like carbony. They clean up really well. So hopefully setting these heads off, getting them cleaned and everything, they should be in really good shape. Now let's just go ahead and get the other side. It's pretty much the same story as the other side. It's just, you know, slimy and sludgy. Now it's just time to dig in there and find the head bolts buried in sludge. I got these off already, but they should come off pretty easily. Hopefully they're nice and lubed because of all this sludgy oil in the motor. I think all the head bolts are out. It's hard to tell with these because they're so covered in sludge, but they're nice and sticky, so they actually kind of lift out. So let's see what we got. Oh, yeah, sure enough. So I'm definitely the first person to be lied to in the wrong direction. So for future reference, flat top, if it's one of these, you know, it says 4853 right there. Flat top means it's a 4.8. Dish means it's a 5.3. The reason why is they have the same combustion chambers, same 61.5 cc combustion chambers. So to have the same compression ratio, they put flat top pistons in 4.8s. And then grab my tape measure here. You can see, so yeah, it's like 3.6 inches. So yep, this is in fact a 5.3. This ridge is really hard to see with a bore scope just because it's so dark and everything. But yeah, this piston also is pretty dirty. There's other ones that are less dirty, but yeah, so now I figure, so this is a assumingly good. I haven't found, I'll look more at the bores and stuff, but I don't see any chipped pistons yet. The walls look pretty good. They don't look nearly as like black polished when the rings go bad that I've seen. But yeah, let me go ahead and get the other head off and we'll think about what to do next. Go ahead and pull this side off. So sludgy. Now the number one failure I see on these things, and by number one I mean literally every single one that I've ever had running, it's always the pistons that let go. So yeah, I don't see any chips out of pistons, and then what happens is when the pistons let go, the piston starts to move around. I guess it starts piston slapping, and what it does is I've noticed that it'll like, basically the cylinder wall will be like machined black, like where it's not like scratched or ridged, but it looks like somebody like polished it to make it super dark. So that all looks good. Potentially whatever's making this oil so sludgy, whether it be water getting in it, or maybe a head gasket, hopefully not a cracked head. You know, early 5.3s have a tendency to, they crack in one of the water jackets in here, but that was pretty much only in like 1999 and 2000. This being in 04, I'm pretty sure I'm okay. I'll have to see what factory these heads came out of, but potentially just a bunch of water, sludgy oil, maybe took out a lifter and that's what all the clattering is, but it's also not clattering like one failed. It's just like maybe they're all gummed up. So yeah, let me pull the trays and lifters out next, see if I can find any smoking gun. Pull these trays out. There's so much goop, it's hard to get them out. Let's see if they come out with the trays still holding them. That one fell. I'm really gonna have to clean these off and inspect these. Here I've got one bank of lifters and I'm not able to find anything wrong yet. However, so one thing that's interesting is that you can tell that these are not actually that dirty. So like most of that sludge isn't really like baked in, it just kind of cleans right off. The one thing that is kind of confusing though is it seems to have the earlier style of lifter design. I don't know if these were swapped in at some point. I doubt somebody swapped anything in that motor, but So it's got the exposed wheel style. So I've got this guy. So here's another lifter, which as you can see here, see how it's a lot more brown. So this is what they usually look like after, you know, however many miles. But this style, as you can see, the lifter, the entire body of it surrounds the wheel a lot more, whereas these, and I've actually seen these break off in like early LS1s where you spin them really high. But yeah, I'm not sure. So it's got, like I said, it's got 13mm valley pan bolts, so it's supposedly floating wrist pins, but early lifters. So this thing's kind of weird. Also, like I said, it made noise and I can't find the source of the noise. So yeah, let me get the other side off. Hopefully I find something actually broken. The slime makes it almost impossible to actually get anything. So here I've got this side's lifters, and yeah, sure enough, I can't find anything wrong. Especially since I was realizing too, it was making a lot of noise, but you know, no metal. Like obviously this looks like freaking chocolate, but there's no shininess, no metal in it, and it's not that carbony. So something I'm thinking is it may be a set of cam bearings. So I did say, you know, the only failure I see is piston, but technically that's not true. I did find one engine that had bad cam bearings, and they make a bunch of god-awful noise, and everyone who's ever, you know, contacted me like, hey, my motor's, you know, toast, and they show me the noise it makes, and it's crazy, and it just ends up being a cam bearing, and it just makes a bunch of noise, but the motor still runs. So luckily the stand's still set up pretty well, so I can yank the starter, lock the flex plate, I'll pull the pulley off, and we'll see if we can get the cam out. If the cam is stuck, that's basically our thing right there. And something I just remembered is that the motor is still actually all wired up on the stand. So technically I can spin it over with the starter and it'll spin really quickly because it has a no, you know, push rod, no cylinder heads or anything. It might start spraying oil, I guess maybe, actually probably not because it's all sludgy. But yeah, let me spin it over and see if we can hear any weird noises. Yeah, it sounds fine. Granted, that starter's really loud, but yeah, hopefully we find a smoking gun. If not, I guess it's just making noise for mystery reasons. Lock tool is in, and I got the crank bolt out. And one thing is that this crank bolt was definitely one of the hardest ones that I've had to get out in a while. I'm not sure if that means it's probably never been off or it has been off. A lot of the ones where I find where they've been off, they come off really easily again because nobody puts them on as tight as they are from the factory. Or maybe the complete opposite where they put it on way too tight. The other thing I thought of too is I'm definitely not going to change the title of this video because obviously the fact that it's a 5.3 won't make any sense with all the stuff I said about being a 4.8. So I guess we'll just still call it 4.8 and also 5.3. We got the crank pulley off using my Evertough Chrysler puller, which worked great every single time. Now it's just time to get the timing cover off and a couple bolts for the oil pan. And I really like working on my engines on my run stand. It's also like the perfect height. It's another reason why I built it the way that it is. Pop this cover off. All right, lots of sludge, but let's see what we find. More things that really don't make a lot of sense. This whole engine's kind of strange, so obviously lots of sludge. It's kind of hard to see, but this timing chain does seem to have quite a bit of slack in it. I've been moving it back and forth, and the slack, these always are kind of slacky because there is no, there's no guide. You know, the Gen 4 motors have a guide. Secondly, this is a very unique cam gear. So starting for the Gen 4 engines, obviously the cam sensor is back here for Gen 3. Gen 4 moved it up here. There's a couple of crossover engines where, so this is a 1X 24 tooth 1X cam gear, but in the front, not being used. I'm guessing maybe they started to phase those in when they also started to phase in the 13s. So maybe that's not the right cam gear. Maybe that's not the right timing chain. Kind of odd. Here, I have some Gen 4s I can show. This is my aluminum 6.0 2008. Yeah, you can see it there. My LFA, so as you can see here. So this has VVT and a whole bunch of stuff. This is the cam sensor and the VVT sensors over there. So when they went to 58 tooth on the reluctor, they went 4 tooth on the cam, and then it's the cam gears up in the front, and it's just 4 positions on the cam gear. So there's a couple of years where you could get 24 tooth, but in the front cam, which is technically exactly this engine. So this is my 05 LH6, as you can see here. So this has a front cam, but it was still a 24 tooth motor, and you can see that's the 1X cam gear. And that's because this is a weird engine where it doesn't have a cam sensor in the back, even though it's Gen 3. And for reference, this is what it's supposed to look like. So this is the standard Gen 3 one. So there's no sensor on it at all because they weren't, the sensor was still back there. And technically also for Gen 4, the reason why that's a very unique cam gear, and I think like the LS9 is the only one that has 3 bolts and then the 4 position, is they went to one big bolt for the cam. Obviously my LFA is not apart, but yeah, if I took my LFA apart, it would have one big bolt for the cam, then the phaser and all this other stuff. So 3 bolts with a front cam is a unique like transition. So cam gear is out of the motor. However, it is kind of odd. So this thing is really starting to not make sense. So first off, I feel like this is way too much cam thrust since there's nothing actually, you're supposed to kind of just be still. Second of all, on the cam retention plate, those are not countersunk bolts. Normally they're supposed to be countersunk, so it's all flush, and then they're Torx bits and they're really hard to get off. Like, well, they're hard to, well, not hard to get off, but easy to strip rather. Those are just regular 10 mils. So let's go ahead and pull this off, clean it up, see if I can find, what exactly is going on. Secondly, once I pull the cam out, because it spins freely, so I don't think it's cam bearings. If we pull the oil pump off, which is covered in sludge, I'll be able to measure this timing chain, because maybe the timing chain was stretched and that was slapping around. I don't know, I'll have to go back and review the footage to see exactly like what kind of noise it sounded like. So I've got the retention plate out, you can see here. So this is usually a wear item, like whenever you pull the cam apart. It looks like, I can't tell if that's, oh no, it's just a little bit of grease. So that was still working, but it's not countersunk on either side. So maybe it's the version that wasn't countersunk. And then as far as pulling the cam out, I think I might have to remove the radiator. I thought I didn't initially, but let's get this thing out. Let's see. Yeah, radiator needs to move. All right, cam coming out. And let's see. Don't see anything out of the ordinary yet. Let's see if it's a stock cam or not. I'm 90% sure it is, but you can actually see what the part number is back there, but you need to clean it off first. Here I got the cam all nice and cleaned up. So on the back here, the last 4 digits, so 0967, that's the last 4 digits of the stock LM7 LR4 camshaft, so 191, 190, so that's not anything special. But as you can see, the cam is really clean. As soon as I clean the sludge off of all this stuff, the motor is super like shiny new. So really the only thing I have left to do is, like I said, maybe I guess check this tension of the or the slack of the timing chain. The cam bearings, they're all there. They show a bunch of copper, but they always do. That's kind of like the whole joke about never look at your cam bearings. But other than that, I'm pretty much out of ideas. I keep watching back the footage of it running, and it's definitely noisy. The oil pump is, I unbolted it, but then I remembered that, yeah, you have to get to that bolt, and it's really hard to get to, especially when it's covered in sludge. And then, yeah, with the better lighting, you can see like just how crazy sludgy this is. Basically, the only really things I can do is obviously check that timing chain. I think what I'm going to do now, because it's so disassembled, I'm going to pull it off the stand, put it back on the rotating one that it was on before, pull the oil pan, drain the oil, see how the bottom end looks, and assuming the bottom end looks fine, then whatever the noise was, it's gone now. So now we're right back where we started. So it's on my little rotating stand, off the run stand. Now I'm just going to go ahead and I'll flip it over. I get all the oil out of it. It all came out pretty chunkily. And then I'll pull the pan, hopefully not make too much more of a mess. Check the bottom end, and if assuming I can't find anything, I'm just gonna call this thing, fixed or whatever, lack of a better term. This thing upside down, nice and sludgy, the pan's off, pan's chilling over there. And I loosen this, so I think I can get this one-handed. Alright, so there's the sludgy oil pump. Maybe I'll run some numbers on it to see if it's new. I doubt it is. And then there's the timing chain. So yeah, I'll grab another one that I have lying around, see if it's any looser, but I doubt that's the case. But I was going over here, so in the oil pan, you can see, I think it shows up on camera, that looks like copper flake. I can't really feel it. It's not really sharp, but you can see how goopy this all is. But that might be, like I said, the cam bearing just letting go and making a bunch of noise. But the last one that I had a cam bearing fail, I literally couldn't get the cam out. So I had to like wrestle it out. But these feel pretty rough, but they always do when you look at them. But I guess now I'll just pull the windows tray, check out, I don't think I'm going to pull caps, but just check everything, make sure that it looks good. Then as I was cleaning out the oil pan, finding more of that flake, I noticed that the oil filter actually has a writing on it. So this is something I always hope is there, but I've never really found. So we've got some sort of code, whatever, a number, some other more code, and then I believe that's a date of 1/11/21. So that means this thing was running around, driving, being a vehicle, and getting oil changes out of place at least, I guess, what, 3 years ago. So that's pretty interesting. Lastly, we have the windage tray coming off. And then, oddly enough, underneath the windage tray, I guess that's catching a lot of sludge. It really doesn't look that bad. I think most of the sludge has been slung around. I'm cleaning up and looking around in this thing, and I really didn't have to clean this up too much. Most of the sludge found its way, I guess, to the top of the heads and to the oil pan. However, there's even more questions coming up with this thing. So like I said before, this is a 2004 engine, the way I can tell is because of the date code. And then, like I said, 13 millimeter valley pan bolts. That's when they started to phase in the Gen 4 stuff and have Gen 4 rods, you know, the floating wrist pin. The problem is that these are definitely Gen 3 connecting rods. So I have this. This is an original LS1 piston. This is from high school. This is my 2000 Camaro engine. So that's a 3.898 piston. And that is what the original rods look like. The way you can tell is because obviously it's pressed in. That's why that piston is still on there. Whenever I tell them apart, I always keep them. This is the, you know, the Gen 4, the floating wrist pin rod. So it's visually different, visually beefier. These are still fine, but these are the ones that everybody wants. And usually, I guess until right now, when they did the 13 millimeter valley pan bolt change from 10, that's when they went to those rods. However, that's clearly not the case because these are not those. And like I said, also 12552216, that's the number for the 3.622 crank. No matter what it's in, it's always that, which also doesn't really make any sense because each crank is weighted differently. So the 5.3, 5.7, 6.0, and 6.2, they all have the same stroke, all have the same part number for some reason, but they're all weighted totally different because the pistons are all different sizes. So yeah, even more confusion, but all of these bearings look fine. I didn't pull any caps, but they all, you know, they all like shift how they should. They all have the right thrust and just feeling. The motor spins free and it's spun free the entire time. So I'm honestly just kind of at a loss. And also, you know, because there was that theory, I went ahead and I found another LS timing chain that I had lying around that's not from a noisy motor, and they are exactly the same length. So if it was, this one wasn't so sludgy, I wouldn't be able to tell them apart. So that theory debunked. Figure now I'll explain why I even picked this thing up in the first place and why I'm going through all the trouble. The reason is because of this engine. So this is my 2005 LH6. My wife and I, we pulled this out of the yard, let's see, October 2022, so almost 2 years ago now, and it's kind of just been sitting here ever since. The LH6 is pretty weird. I have a whole video. We go through it all. We tear it apart. Basically, in 05, it's the first engine to get AFM, and it's got a weird hybrid of where it's half Gen 4, half Gen 3. So it's got, you know, the AFM towers, a front cam, but it's still 24 tooth in the back, and then it's got the weird, which that motor had the same cam gear, the 1X in the front. But basically my idea is I want to put this engine in my Avalanche. My Avalanche is the 2004. It's got just a regular LM7 in it, and this thing is sitting here, and I might as well do something with it. It originally came with, you know, like I said, active fuel management. That's all already been pulled out. 243 heads, those are off. I think those are them sitting right there. But my idea, I have a whole cam grind that I came up with. I want to put 706 heads back on it. So that way my Avalanche will drop 100 pounds. We'll have 10.5 to 1 compression with its fancy flat tops. Floating wrist pins, which this engine actually has them, doesn't have, like, not an imposter like that one is. And let's see, probably just under 400 horsepower. So I'm just waiting for a couple more parts. I have the heads now, obviously. I need to order the cam, and then I need a very specific valley pan that I'll go over later. All right, so I think that just about wraps this up. Obviously, I wish I would have had actual carnage, actually found the smoking gun, but oh well. If you do want this engine, definitely let me know. I don't need it. I'll sell it cheap. It's just gonna, you know, sit around here, make everything dirty. I got what I needed out of it, and it looks like it's in pretty good shape. The bores look good. Cam bearings not so much. Nice and sludgy, but hey, you know, whatever. I do have a couple other 5.3s, both running. I've got a 4L60E sitting over there. Those are both for sale. All that stuff ran too good to make videos on. And then as far as videos go, let's see, we've got the LA6 video. I want to do that soon, and then I've got the my LFA sitting over there. I want to tear that apart soon, so stay tuned for all of that.